Well, hello, everyone. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here, we've got I think, a great panel planned for this next section. What we're talking about here is we're going to talk about the speed of change, and the words that were used were evolve or be left behind. But it's sort of like what the old saying, I think it's change or die. I don't think it's being left behind. I think we're in our industry, at least, and with consumers, this is not a case where you're going to have to catch up. You either recognize the change, you respond, or you find something else to do. We've got a great panel, and we're going to talk about from diverse parts of the industry, the commercial vehicle industry, how the change should be interpreted and the kinds of things that we can do with our own infrastructure and ecosystem to assure change occurs. We all, it's always it's fun to kind of think back, and we all have in our minds the old brands that maybe are examples of those that failed to do this. Kodak always comes to mind. They were convinced that people would rather hold a picture in their hand than look at it on some computer. And of course, the facts don't really bear that out. Polaroid was the same way. It reminds me a lot of those who say that the digital selling process or electric vehicles or alternative ways of owning vehicles, it's just a fad. It's not. It's what the customers want. The reality is, the reason this works, change or die, is it's the changing needs and desires of our customers. And as technology allows us to provide them a different level of service or a different level of satisfaction, that's what they want, especially if it's more efficient and it costs less and it's a better way of doing business. It's better for the environment. It's better for our health. Well, that's what customers want. And so it isn't that we're resisting change if we don't adopt and embrace it. We're resisting what customers want. And by doing that, you work yourself out of business. Polaroid's another company that went through that. Nokia, Blockbuster, you can go on and on. But those companies that were able to make the transition have remade themselves. And we're lucky to have three experts along today in their businesses that can share with us how they see this playing out in our industry. I'm going to introduce. I'm Jim Press. I work closely with Catherine. I'm an advisor to Work Truck Solutions. She's been trying to teach me the commercial vehicle industry, and her patience has been good. I'm beginning to learn a little bit, but I came out of the retail car business. I had the pleasure, actually, of running two different car companies, Toyota and then Chrysler. And now I've been in retail for the last decade and have been enjoying very much. And also, the first thing I always want to do when I'm speaking to an audience with dealers in it, and I know there's some dealers here today, is to apologize for everything I must have done when I was at Chrysler and at Toyota. Now I know what you're talking about. So Mark Hope is with us. Mark is with EAVX, and it's a fascinating part of the Poindexter Group. The Poindexter Group, as you know, is the largest developer of technology for transportation and commercial vehicles, bodies. It was one of the first investment pooled companies that got started in a roll-up and rolled up a number of body companies and upfitters. And he's got a really fun job. He's an engineer, and everybody would like to have this. His job is to develop the next generation of delivering work truck bodies with the most sophisticated EV and AV technologies. And then those will be rolled out through the Poindexter Group. He's been 30 years in the industry. He's an expert and a leader. And in fact, when he was at Morgan Olson's, I think that they introduced the now benchmark electric step van, and he was the developer of that. So he's bringing that technology as a manufacturer and a product developer to our panel. And Mark, thank you for joining us, and we welcome you.
Jim,
Dain Giesie is a 20-year veteran with Enterprise. What a great company! That is the transportation company of the future, as well as that's one that does remake itself and continues to remake itself into being relevant in the future. He's assistant vice president of business development for Enterprise Fleet, and that's a full-service fleet management business for small and medium-duty trucks and also customers. And as you know, Enterprise is a great family company. The culture has always been focused around customer satisfaction. And so as we move into this era of whatever the transportation is going to be in the future, mobility keeps coming around, is managing fleets, managing vehicles, different ways of owning them, different ways of servicing them. And Enterprise will be there. They will be there before others. And mobility is, as it's being described, is his business. So Dain, thank you. We appreciate your sharing your time and expertise with us.
Thanks for having me.
Any secrets you want to? It's just a group. We won't share them with anybody else.
You bet.
Devin Daly is the CEO and co-founder of SpinCar. He's an accomplished technology executive who spent time in other industries, apparel, using and learning technology, and has now found one that's near to my heart, and that is, how do we make a virtual showroom replace the brick and mortar in automobile dealerships? And I think that's he's a global leader. They've got representation throughout the world, and he's working with auto dealerships, auctions, resellers, OEMs. The technology enables the dealers to turn online shoppers into online buyers. And if you stop and think about the reality of the Tesla model, I've talked to a number of people that have bought Teslas who bought them not because of the car, but the experience. And Devin is making that available. And they're building the digital showroom. And now he's talking about entering the commercial market, which is, I think, a great opportunity as well. Probably a bigger opportunity because it's B2B. And B2B is probably more of a digital opportunity than just retail. So anyway, thank you all joining us. And we'd like to get into some discussion here. And I'm going to ask a couple of questions, but this, free flow, anything comes to mind, jump in. We're talking about change, and either change or die. From your perspective, maybe you could describe in your industry, what are we talking about change? When we say change or die, what does change mean? What kind of gaps exist in your industry? What needs to change from what we've done to what we're going to be doing, from horse-drawn to internal combustion? And, maybe, Mark, you could start with that and kind of describe from your standpoint as a manufacturer what that change is that we're talking about.
Sure. I think, if you start with the market side of it first, I think there's a huge pressure on all of our customers to reduce their emissions. So if you look at electrification mandates in California and the adoption across the country, there are internal, external pressures for them to really get into zero emissions. And that goes from airports to municipal utility fleets to our package delivery customers. And on top of that, I think on the backstage we were talking, I think Devin said it well, e-commerce has gone up tenfold with COVID's actually accelerated that. So you have this two factors that really drive it. You have this increased demand in last mile, coupled with these increasing pressures to go zero emissions. And that's driving a tremendous amount of change in the technologies we're using for the chassis and then how they interact with the bodies. And our customers have they have a need for efficiency and safety. So those fundamental elements of having to be, drive the efficiency in the delivery or the efficiency in the use, the cost down, those pressures are always there, but then it's coupled with the demands going up and the pressures for reducing emissions are going up. And so I think that's driving a lot of what we're seeing today.
So are you, from that perspective, and it is emission regulations that are driving a lot of this societal needs, no question we need to address it. But are the customers ready? Do you have a lot of customers that are anxious, or is this going to be is it going to be a problem where we're not able to provide ICs if that's what people want, if the regulatory environment is encouraging us to build the wrong product?
No, I think IC engines will always be there. I don't know that it'll go 100% electric in the near term. We're guessing if we get out past, say, 5 to 10 years. So there will always be an internal combustion engine. I don't think that's going to ever change while we're kind of doing what we're doing. And if you look at the mandates, they're not 100%. So there's a percentage of new sales that will be electrified. But that will drive a lot of what's going to happen in the infrastructure, the charging infrastructure, how an end user will use the vehicle. I guarantee it will affect Dain and Devin greatly in what they do as well. It'll also drive change in how we develop bodies and how we make those bodies fit to those new chassis and do what the end users need them to do and take advantage of some of the efficiencies you can get. I don't think it'll, I think we'd be kidding ourselves or fooling ourselves if we think that combustion engines are going to go away anytime soon.
I sure agree with you. It'll be interesting to see what really happens versus what the forecasts are. Dain, how about from your perspective in terms of fleet management? What does change mean to you in that regard?
From our perspective, our mission is to make sure that we're giving our customers the best recommendations that we can based on the facts that are available and making sure that we're staying ahead of any trends or any changes that are both near term and far term. And part of that means, like right now, we're spending a lot of time trying to understand and the difference between interest and demand. Many of our customers, almost all of our customers, are service providers, and they need these vehicles in their operations to provide a service to their customers. And safety, their employee safety, their customer service, and operational efficiencies are top of mind for our customers. And so us understanding how to advise our customers that are interested in implementing EVs into their fleet is what we're spending our time focused on right now. What do our customers need to understand? How will it impact their operations? How will it impact their employees? How will it impact their ability to take care of their customers and grow their business? It's accelerating quickly because when you look back over the last 5 years, then most of the EV vehicles that were being developed or being released didn't necessarily serve the vocational need of many of our customers. And that's, as we all know, that's changing as pickup trucks and cargo vans are starting to be developed in part of the manufacturer's roadmap. So, again, for us, it's understanding how to advise our customers so they can make the most informed decision for their business.
What your customers well. I would guess you have an idea of what percentage of them have voiced an interest in electric.
That's a hard question. So, we have, tens of thousands of customers. And so there are customers that are voicing opinions, and there's a lot of them. We also have a really large municipality fleet portion of our business that are interested in implementing EVs for different reasons. They're more, whether that's the green initiative or greenhouse gas reduction. So I don't have a firm number on the amount of customers that are that have expressed interest, but we have done some studies around what the feasibility of the adoption both now and in 3 to 5 years looks like. And when we looked recently, we partnered with Geotab and we did a survey of over 100,000 vehicles that we have in service today. And we looked at the way those vehicles were being used, the type of business that they were being used in, the miles, and the environment that they were in. And we identified about 13% of those vehicles that were feasible to be converted today. But when you look out 3 to 5 years and you overlay that with the manufacturer product roadmaps, then that number can escalate up to 45%. So we see an acceleration of adoption in certain fleets, but they still have to make sense within the operation of that business and within the goals and objectives of that particular business as well.
I think both of us would probably agree the transition to EVs, while it may be geographic for cars and retail, the commercial business is the most applicable, and will probably be the leading edge of introducing, just for what you just said, Dain, in terms of the use profile, the mission of the vehicles themselves. So now, Devin, you're in a completely different world. Your world is the way people buy vehicles. Personally, I've always been enthusiastic for being able to buy vehicles online, virtual showrooms, and it's more efficient. You have fewer salespeople. It's much more customer friendly. But most dealers still resist that. In fact, my experience is when we've introduced your digital tools, they take those tools and still try to bring the customer in for an appointment. It's sort of the old way of buying vehicles versus new. So how are you finding in your world the sales process impact, and what does change mean to you?
Yeah, appreciate it, Jim. In terms of change, I would say, obviously more and more of the purchase process for, in retail automotive is moving online. And that was certainly, like many other industries, COVID was an accelerant of that transition and that change. Absolutely. So I would say the two sort of main gaps that we see, one would be, consumers have an expectation, to your point, Jim, of having a immersive, educational, intuitive experience, right? Consumers are used to shopping on places like Amazon.com and Apple.com, but instead what they're getting is most retail dealers' websites are really just digitizations of newspapers, right? They're still just static photos in the upper left-hand corner with, kind of textual descriptions. And you compare that, and there is definitely a huge disconnect between consumer expectation and what dealerships ultimately deliver on their retail websites. The other gap in the industry, and from more of a sort of dealer or retailer mindset, is a lot of dealers since COVID have started implementing online checkout tools or digital retailing tools, and yet there's really abysmal checkout rates, right? Dealerships are lucky if they sell 1, 2, 3 vehicles a month through their online checkout portal. And in our mind, that's because there's a massive gap. Dealers forgot to think about, how do I get somebody comfortable making a $30,000 decision without touching, smelling, test driving the vehicle, right? So how do I use effective merchandising to help drive somebody down the funnel, get them comfortable, educate them, answer their questions? And that's what we think effective digital engagement platforms can help dealerships with. We view effective digital retailing is really predicated on transparent, immersive, educational merchandising.
So, Devin, for the dealers in the audience, how does SpinCar provide that? How do you close that gap with SpinCar?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have merchandising and visualization tools that help a consumer get a better understanding of what's included on a vehicle. They can view the vehicle from every angle. They can zoom in on any components they're interested in. We also have feature merchandising, which helps dealerships convey what options and packages are included on a vehicle, right? We see a big problem in our industry is consumer vehicles are becoming increasingly complex, especially, with EVs, they're even more complex and complicated. And it's hard for a consumer to understand what those features are. So if I see something has Mercedes collision avoidance system or Mercedes CAS, for example, I don't know what that is. I have to leave the dealer's site to go search that feature. We've built the ability to embed rich educational, multimedia educational content directly on the dealer's website. And then we also leverage conversational AI to help a consumer get their questions answered real time. So, a lot of dealerships, if a consumer has a question that they ask in, they get responded to with a templatized autoresponder that doesn't answer their question whatsoever. Our conversational AI helps answer all of those questions and again, drive somebody down the funnel to ultimately hand them off to a digital retailing provider.
That's definitely the future. It kind of brings up a little bit of a timely issue that it's always been, I think, in a lot of people's minds. And that is right now, we're all short of product, either components or not just chips, but foam and rubber and silicone and everything else. And not only did COVID, I think, affect the way people were buying cars, but now it's affecting the supply chain. And perhaps in the commercial business more than others, this whole order process, inventorying is going to change, the bailment pools. And I think there's going to be a movement towards building vehicles to suit individual customers' needs, as opposed to building a lot of inventory that people will select from. And then that's a much better match. Do you see that again in all of your areas? I mean, do you see a change in the way cars or commercial vehicles are scheduled and built and prepared for the customers? Is there a build to order coming? Is there going to be less inventory? Maybe Mark, you've already been build to order. I'm not sure.
Bring it. We would welcome that. That's exactly what we do. So our business units are custom body builders, and we can handle large fleet orders. We do. I think we're probably the experts in that high mix, low volume kind of world, with being able to balance automation to it. So we typically run large delivery fleets. We can run those, and then we're very adept at building custom bodies to order. And we have our operational processes. We're lean. We have foundational lean. So inventory management is paramount to our company's success, and I think we do it very, very well. So I think we're well poised for that type of change.
Yeah, I think that's inevitable, and it's interesting. Even Devin, from what you're doing with a virtual showroom, the configurators that make it easy for customers to do that shopping at retail are really hard on commercial vehicles, or more difficult. The challenge is because of the different uses, the gear ratios and the transmissions and all of the options to fit the individual needs of that job application. Do you think that could be adapted in the commercial field?
Yeah, I do. We're partnered with Work Truck Solutions, who obviously has relatively normalized vehicle data that allows us to do a lot of that. So we can automate the hotspot tagging of particular upfit features or accessories that are on a commercial vehicle. We're already starting to do that in the commercial vehicle industry, and I think we'll be able to expand those capabilities.
Yeah, I think you've got, that's really something where Work Truck has a very unique position in the industry. And Dain, from your standpoint, I assume you need more vehicles. I know the answer to that. And I'm first of all, I apologize for the problems, but they're probably good problems. The other problem is the prices you're paying.
Yeah, Jim, I think that there's always unique opportunities that come out of challenges, and factory ordering has been something that we advise our customers on. and have for many, many years now. And I think I can't speak for dealers and how they're going to inventory vehicles in the future and what their plans are going to be, but I do know that this presents the opportunities for our customers to really understand the value of some of those recommendations we've been making for years around, factory ordering their vehicle, getting their orders in early at the beginning of the model year so that they're in line for production, and keeping the average age of their fleet within their replacement guidelines so that they're comfortable in the flexibility that they have built into their fleet in the event that something changes in the market like we're seeing today.
So, Mark, in that regard, how do electric powered commercial vehicles or maybe fuel cell at some point, how does that change the needs that customers have for their emissions? I mean, is that the way we order them, the way we inventory them, the way they're used and spec'd? Will that change because of the simplicity of the powertrain? How do you see that?
I don't know how it'll change the ordering process I don't know that that'll necessarily change in the fact that, there's a chassis and a body. I think where really the change will get driven is how we integrate the body and the chassis together and the opportunities that it provides. So when a change like an EV system or a fuel cell system comes into play, that it enables an opportunity to kind of reinvent the body to match it. So you really want to take advantage of those things that, say, an electric powertrain provides. Don't always have to put you can go to a completely flat floor. You can put the driver in a different position. I don't know that we'll get as radical putting the driver all the way to the back of the vehicle, but you could pretty much move things around a bit. So I think where the opportunities jump in are how you would envision or re-envision the body systems to match what the chassis are doing or the abilities that they provide to kind of enhance that overall value proposition to the end user. So improve the visibility, improve the safety, integrate the electronics a little bit tighter, looking at weight reductions, aerodynamic improvements. So there's a whole host of changes that happen to the body when we make a change to the chassis. It opens up the door to do things differently.
Have any of the OEMs used your knowledge to try and design with you a purpose-built chassis, or is that?
No, I think we are collaborating. We're out there right now working with the majority, or trying to work with the majority of the new EV providers in the space today, and fuel cells are part of that. So we are out there today working with a great number of these companies to do just that.
You think fuel cells have a point where they'll be utilized for commercial vehicles?
Well, that's a loaded question, Jim.
The audience wants to know. Everybody wants to know. Everybody wants to know.
Well, adoption for EV is going to take some time, so you can imagine that fuel cells are going to take some time as well. But yeah, I think there's, when you look at what's going to be required for different applications, I think range extension is going to be a big piece of it. So, fuel cell adoption in certain areas is going to be big, and it depends on the use case and the duty cycle. Class 8 trucks are a classic example of a good use of fuel cells, right? And long range, long haul, pure electric. It's tough to get the battery charges up, and being able to have a range extended fuel cell opportunity, I think that's really good. My guess is that there will be other opportunities that present themselves in the medium duty space as things become, as we progress in the future. So yeah, I think there will be opportunities for fuel cells.
So in the way our panel's developed is Devin takes care of ordering and selling, you make them, and then Dain operates the fleets. And one of the questions that's going to, I think, in my mind, affect change is the kind of ownership structures. There's been a lot of discussion about subscription, shared vehicles. Of course, we've seen with our friends at Uber, or some of those services where they're all sharing the same capital and the same asset. How do you see the future of mobility a little further down the road? What change will occur? Will there be private ownership, or will the fleets be shared? How do you see that, Dain?
Gee, Jim, if I knew that answer, then I think we'd all be better off, right? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I think it goes back to what Mark said earlier, and it's really going to depend on the duty cycle and what the customers need their vehicles to do in order to serve their customers, take care of their employees, and grow their business. And a lot of that's going to be dependent on the technology that emerges, the operational efficiencies or impact. There's too many questions out there for me to say which way we're going to go. I think that there is growing demand in the fleet management space and leasing vehicles because people understand through these challenging times we had that there's value in having expertise, and there's value in having a trusted advisor to help you understand the trends. But what those trends are going to be beyond a year from now, if I'd answered that question a year ago, I'd have been wrong. So I'm gonna leave that to the experts.
Well, but if you boil it down to what customers really want, is more efficiency. You could make a case that if you have a particular type of commercial application that sits half the day and works half the day, and you have two customers, there may be a way for both of them to share it. And maybe Devin's AI would allow us to identify uses, maybe step vans that somebody uses during the day for delivery. At night, they deliver parts or something, and the same vehicle. Those kinds of applications may occur. That's probably more software oriented than hardware, but that also allows us to kind of talk a little bit about vehicles that don't have drivers. And when you introduce vehicles that are self-driving, that's going to have an impact again on the fleet, or how they're used, how they're serviced, or even where they're housed. So have you thought about that at Enterprise at all, of what you're going to do when Amazon puts 100,000 AI-driven vans in stock with no driver?
Jim, there's all kinds of conversations that go on. I think that we're a long way away from that point, and so we're more focused on the here and now right now, and with our.
Well, I can see that, but I think commercial may be the first leading edge for those applications, and we already see it for like pizza delivery things and stuff like that.
It's important to us as a company that we are at the front of any changes in the mobility space. So, any discussions that are happening, whether that be with our manufacturer partners or regulatory or our customers, we want to be part of that. Going back to, we want to make sure that we're able to help our customers make the best and most informed decisions. Mm-hmm. So, I think that's certainly the position that we're in right now, is making sure that we're involved in the conversations and we understand what's happening.
Well, the next element of that is the AI, and that's technology being applied. And I guess, Devin, you have a view interestingly there. I saw an announcement from GM very recently that they think software as a business is their future. And a lot of this ownership structure and the order cycle and the introduction of vehicles is really software driven and technology dependent. Do you see a day when there could be no dealership showrooms? Do you see a day where we could have vehicles driven without actually having people driving? We're going to have that, but customers, where they'll have their own car and they'll take them where they want to go. Do you see that from a technology point of view?
Yeah, I mean, Absolutely. I think we're already, starting to see, as you mentioned, how dealerships can operate more efficiently with less staff. And, from our perspective, that's where, we think conversational AI can play a really key role, right? Dealerships today are having trouble keeping their sales team fully staffed, and, they're getting more leads than they've ever gotten before, given the inventory shortage and the environment that we're in today. And conversational AI performs really well in this environment because it can respond automatically. It can automate a lot of the more tedious components of running an automotive sales team or business development center. So we think AI will play a key role in this. In terms of, do we think dealers are here to stay? I personally am. I think, as you alluded to earlier, Jim, maybe they become more sort of delivery centers. I don't think we're going to ever go back to having as much inventory as we did pre-COVID, stocking 90 days worth of inventory. But I also don't think we're going to go to a full European kind of built on spec model. But I could see technology continuing to play more of a role. More of the experience happens online. You come into the showroom to kind of test drive, and you come back in for kind of delivery is how I see things working out personally.
No, and also as Mark said, it's going to be a transition. It's not going to be one day the light switch changes. So you all run successful companies. As we talk of the audience and they want to know, okay, we now know what the changes are and what to look for. How do you change your company? What do you do in your mind? How do you think we can go to your own business unit? And what's your plan for your company to make the changes necessary to keep up with this world of transition? Mark, have you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, mine's probably a little different than the others. I mean, JB Pico, we formed EAVX just because for that one purpose and one purpose alone, which has changed. So, the role of EAVX in this industry or our parent company is to be that hub or that focal point to develop the next generation bodies and to work and collaborate with Devin, Dain, and then the chassis providers and technology providers there. So this is our response to that change in the industry is the formation of the EAVX. So it's our sole purpose.
And it's not only that, but it sounds to me like it's driven by the top management, the executives at the top that are.
Yeah, I would. It was I think you said I have a really fun job, and it is a challenge of building it up from being employee number one in it. But I would have to say that this came directly from John Poindexter. I mean, John saw the need. He saw what was coming and wanted to create a business unit focused on innovation and working in this dynamic environment. And this was the EAVX.
Interesting. Well, you're an example of a successful company, and that's why Poindexter has done so well over the years since the early '80s. Dain, how about from your standpoint?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jim. For us, our approach hasn't changed and since we since Jack founded the company in 1957, and it's customer service and the customers are our North Star. So change always happens when we listen to our customers and we listen to our employees, and they tell us what is needed out there. We don't, we're not going into this with a predetermined direction. We're going into this with an open mind and open ears and listening to what our customers need and what our partners tell us is best.
So do you have any particular focus from the top about making change in the company, or is just an ongoing organic part of how you operate it?
I think it's both. We have, the ongoing organic part from top-down approach of our company is listen to our customers, listen to our employees. Chrissy wants us to be, the best mobility provider in the world and for our customers. So that's what we're focused on. And what that means, I think, is we all have seen in the last few years that's an evolving conversation.
Devin, how about from your standpoint? Change is your middle name. in the industry you're in, but how do you change your company?
Yeah, good question. I think similar to Mark, we really, view ourselves as change agents for our industry, right? There's a massive amount of disruption happening with large, digital endemics like Carvana and Vroom.com that are selling cars completely online and are continuously taking market share from traditional dealerships. And so we view our role as helping those traditional dealerships digitize and keep up and stay relevant in this time of massive change and disruption. So to your point, we're right in the middle of it, helping customers every day with this digital transformation.
Well, it's interesting you say that. That's one of the causes of our being left behind are some of these startup new concepts that are making the old way unnecessary, and they have an advantage. And you may have a comment on this, but they start up in a little bit of a gray area because they don't have the legacy costs and they don't have the same heritage. And they also don't have the same regulatory environment. They're pushing the envelope on the regulatory environment. And so they can be disruptors. And it's hard for a mature company to become disruptor and not be disrupted. And that's probably what you're saying. And I sure agree with that. But you got to be able to respond to them. Tesla has, a lot of people say it's never going to work, and especially in Texas, where I have been for a while. The reality is they're giving customers what they want in a very unique way. The other thing about change that I find it's a real problem. People tend to change systems and processes or leadership, but the real change occurs in people. And you have to change your people. And in a large organization, and Mark, your whole group, the Poindexter group, it's the people have to change, and they have to walk and talk that. So, okay, we've got some Q&A here. One of the questions is the benefit of a bailment pool. Mark, do you have experience with bailment pools?
Our business units, Morgan and Reading use them quite frequently in same with Morgan Olson. So, from our standpoint, it gets the end user a solution a little bit quicker. The chassis is available right off the bat. It's not a custom thing that you'd have to worry about, and then the order entry of the chassis, and then its inclusion then into the line for the body. So bailment pool, gives you an ability to get the vehicle quicker than what you would do through a normal order channel. The chassis is there for you to use.
Yeah, and that's that again is this issue of building vehicles before they're actually ordered, but they're available. And Dain, do you have bailment pool access?
We work with partners that we will source vehicles through bailment pools, and in addition to what Mark said, some of the big benefits are sometimes it's the best of both worlds. So it's more of a just-in-time inventory type concept, but the vehicle is generic enough that it leaves room for the customization for the particular end user that they're looking for.
Yeah, and I also, just as a point of view on retail, we introduced a brand, a sub-brand of Toyota that was based on the idea of a bailment pool, where we brought not completely finished vehicles into pools by region, and then customers would spec the radio, the color of the lighting, and some of those things, the wheels, that they could add after the vehicle was produced. That you couldn't, it takes 9 months to start and finish a vehicle, but at 30 days or 60 days, the cars are waiting. Same thing would be with commercial vehicles, I guess. With the bailment pool, to me, is not part of eliminating inventory. In fact, it's a way to become more efficient with inventory, is what you're saying. Another question we have here is that with work trucks, it's not a $30,000 purchase; it's $80,000. Retail car sites online, you can try before you buy with a grace period, no risk. Work trucks, can you do that as well? It feels complicated because of the upfit factor. Devin, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think that's a key part of any digital retailing strategy, right? Is, in the auto industry, to effectively transact online, you really need to move to a one price, type of environment. So a no haggle type environment. You need to come up with some kind of no haggle return policy. So I think if transacting digitally is, something the industry wants to embrace, then I think figuring out some sort of no risk return policy is really critical. Again, if you're expecting people to purchase $80,000, $60,000, $100,000 commercial vehicles remotely.
So that's an interesting point, though. And I wonder if for commercial vehicles that are spec'd for a customer, if there's a way for you to have this virtual test drive of a product before they actually build it. We're at the step van and they want to move the racks one place, and Mark would know far better than I would about how to do it. But if that may be more useful for work trucks, that's also where this configurator comes in for commercial vehicles, because once you put a 4, 5, 6 gear ratio in the axle of a truck, you can't change it. Or if you put dual wheels instead of single wheels, and so it's going to be a real interesting part of this change process that occurs. It'll be interesting to see. Another question that comes to mind, and that is that downstream, the people that you have in your company you control, but those that you don't, your dealers or distributors or your offices, do you have the need to help them navigate change? I mean, is there as we transition into EVs and fuel cells, how will we communicate to the customers and the salespeople the benefits or the uses or the advantages, especially if they cost more? And how do we change the way they sell cars and communicate with customers? Mark, in your dealer group, how will you manage them, or are your dealers embracing change, or are they? My experience is dealers haven't, but have your dealers shown that they're ready to embrace change, and are they ready?
Yeah, I would say for the most part they are. And for us, it's a mixed model, right? So we don't always go through dealer networks to do this. It's more one-to-one on the customer end of it. So for us, when it comes to the electrification and working with the chassis providers, we're similar to Dain and Devin. We're agnostic to the actual end chassis solution. So we collaborate with as many partners as we possibly can. The end user tends to pick the chassis and the body. So our role in the ecosystem is a partner role. It's a collaborative role. We work with our customer base, typically the end user, to define kind of what that total application needs to be. Mm-hmm. And I would say for the most part, in the worlds that we play in with the dealer space, they are prepared.
They are. Well, because that can become your handicap. Is downstream. How about from your standpoint, Dain, and especially your fleet users? Are they recognizing change or ready?
They are recognizing change. Ready is a tough designation because that's still a moving target as to what that looks like. I know, how are we educating folks downstream in our business? It's really important in enterprise that we have a consistent experience and that our folks are equipped to make those recommendations to our customers. So we are providing the as we get it, the knowledge, the training, the material, the information. But on top of that, many of our company cars have been transitioned to EVs over the last 60 days. And I will say, and I'm one of those users. And today I'm driving a Polestar 2. One, what a fun car to drive. And Jim, and I don't know if we talked about this, but I'm from Texas. So I'm one of those guys that had a little bit of that range anxiety and some of the uncertainty. But it's been a great experience for all of us because we have so many different learning opportunities by having these company cars in service. Some of our folks live in, apartments or condos. So thinking through what at-home charging looks like when you can't plug it in. Some of our folks live in areas where they park in streets, and how do they navigate that? And it's been, and it will continue to be a great learning opportunity for us, and more of a journey type opportunity for us to then explain and share with our customers what we've learned, and not what we think will happen or how we think it will impact their operation, but what we've learned from our own adoption.
That's interesting. And the Polestar doesn't have dealers. They don't have a dealer network. You call and they bring a car out, you test drive it, and you buy it from the guy that brings the car out. It's a different world, isn't it? And it's a great car.
It's a fun car.
I've driven the Polestar.
My kids love it. I mean, it's one of the, and you hear these stories of our folks that are putting these in service, and surprisingly, they didn't know what to expect, and their families really enjoy driving around, or it's just, there's a whole host of benefits that you would just never know until you immersed yourself. So.
You're right. Like never going to a gas station. Having the car.
I still find myself I have young kids, so I still find myself in gas stations quite regularly.
It's nice to come downstairs at night in the morning and the car's gassed up thanks to the electricity. Devin, how about you? What's your view on? And it looks like you're on mute. Is that possible? No,
just unmuted myself. All good.
Okay. So, are the dealers ready for this? Are they ready for change? Are dealers progressive? Are they kind of neutral, or are they dragging their feet a little?
Yeah, good question. I would say, the small minority is progressive, but if you look at it from, sort of an enterprise value standpoint, the top 3 digital disruptors have a larger market capitalization than the next largest 8 publicly traded dealer groups combined. So, in terms of individual dealer groups, it's definitely the minority that I think are fully progressive, but they, are increasingly taking market share and represent the majority of market capitalization. As I said, I would say, however, COVID was an accelerant, like we talked about, in the backstage session. It really forced dealerships that were resistant to change, that have been doing things the same way for the last 50 years, forced them to realize that they had to have a remote retailing strategy and that they had to really embrace digital. So we've seen a surge in demand for digital tools kind of post-COVID, and it's sustained ever since.
Yeah, that's true. And that's where the dealers need to recognize this, and that is one of the disruptors' gray areas advantage, like Carvana, is they don't have to make a profit. All they have to do is have their stock price go up. And so a dealer, if they don't make a profit, they're in a completely different world, and it's hard to compete. But we got to figure it out. We've got to. The dealers have to figure out a business model, and that's where we get into this mobility issue, where you're not just selling one vehicle at a time or a commercial vehicle, but it's the service, it's the process, as what Dain's doing in terms of managing it for them, and assuring that it's ready to do its job every day. And that it goes way beyond what the current idea of dealers. In fact, dealers today make a lot of their money in finance. That's not going to be there. So what do you do to replace that? We got another question here from the audience, which is a good one. Maybe, Mark, you can start with this one. What are good questions that a commercial fleet can ask themselves when deciding if EVs are right for them?
That's another loaded question. Yeah, it's a good question. Thanks for picking me first, Jim. I appreciate that.
You're the engineer.
I think the internal questions you'd have to ask would be first things first would be the use case and the duty cycle. So what is the application doing? What kind of range? What kind of stop and go cycle? Where is it? Is it on the freeways and in the city? Are you at idle more than you're driving? So, when you think about what an EV is going to do for you, think that this is the first thing is what's the application requirements for it? And then, because that's going to drive how many batteries you need, whether you make sense. So that would be the first thing I'd look for is just what are you doing with the vehicle? What are you doing with the application? Where are you using it? What kind of payloads do you need? Where are you? Geographical location is going to make is going to be a bigger, in the initial piece, is going to be a bigger piece to this because there will be mandates for, depending on where you live, your ability to get into or needing to get into an EV vehicle. So that would be the first thing I would look at is just the application. What are you doing with the vehicle? What do you need to do? How much payload? What's the duty cycle look like from a driving standpoint, including kind of the idle time that you're going to do? And then start to back in from there.
Plus,
I guess, Dain, cost of ownership is an issue.
Yeah, cost of ownership is a big part of the equation. I agree with Mark. You first have to ask the question: does the vehicle currently exist to satisfy the need of what the job is? And then the next thing is: do I have a clear understanding of the infrastructure requirements and the operational impact? So if I'm going to have a hub type charging environment, the vehicles come back to the yard every day. Do I understand what the infrastructure requirements are to be able to install those chargers? Do I understand what the cost of those are going to be? And then do I understand the operational impact? So am I going to have all the vehicles there at one time and not have enough chargers to charge them all? How is that going to affect my day-to-day operations? And I think once you largely understand most of those type of questions, then the next thing you have to ask yourself is, what is the objective of the pilot? What are you looking to get out of this? And I don't think, and I haven't seen a use case yet where it made sense to, overnight flip a switch and moving all of your vehicles to EVs. It's more of an evolution than it is a revolution. And so I would say start small. I would say have clear expectations and objectives of what you're doing so that you can learn along the way and adjust and become more efficient. And I think if you do those things and you go in with realistic expectations, then I think you'll have a good experience.
But that's well said, Mark. I'm sorry.
Oh, I would agree. I think that's the operational corollary to that is exactly what Dain said. I think that's another big piece of it. And then how are you going to service it? Right. And then, how do you get it serviced? What's going to happen at that point? And those are the solutions. I think, when you look at, for us and how to adapt to change, it's from our perspective, it's collaboration. It's working with, enterprise and ourselves and the chassis manufacturers to provide that solution because it's different than what's out there today with an ICE engine, right? You don't need to have you're used to doing it. What's expected. But when you change that powertrain up to an EV, I think it's more than just one company trying to pull it forward. It's going to need to be an enterprise, an EAVX, a JB Pico, and a chassis partner to get it there in a SpinCar to help. So, I think it's going to take us all to kind of get this thing moving forward.
That's a great point. That's exactly that's why we're together. You summarized it very well. Devin, do you have a viewpoint on EVs? You're in cold country. I know people in Northern California that won't buy a Tesla because they're afraid they can't find it in the parking lot.
Yeah, have driven them myself. I'm a big fan of the ride quality and all of the torque at 0 RPMs. The first time I drove one, I lent one from a friend in Atlanta, which for those of you that have visited there know it's got some of the worst traffic in the country. So I had pretty bad range anxiety the first time. But I've driven them since and a big fan. Don't own one myself, but definitely see the need for the transformation there.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. your societal impact and your footprint as a company and the statement you make as a company, maybe that's why Enterprises even is put electric cars into use. And that's a part of it too, because you're not just making a technology decision, but you're making a image decision to your customers or your associates, your employees, the communities that you serve. And that's a different situation. It's not just being driven just by the economics. It's also social and political. So that's I have one more question for all of you. Speaking of EVs, and I'm doing this as a reward program where they're going to have some kind of an incentive at some point, a big prize. At what year will EVs outsell ICs?
Oh, sorry. You got me all choked up.
Mark, what's your guess?
Oh.
Globally or domestically?
Domestically.
Domestically.
Yeah.
What year will EVs outsell ICE? You're talking commercial, you're talking all?
Total.
Total. Oh man, I'm going to say like 2050.
Okay, good. Okay. Dain?
I have no idea, Jim.
Devin?
Your guys' guesses are better than mine, but what came to mind for me was sometime around 2035.
2035. That's good. Well, we're when it happens, whoever's closest is going to get a big reward. I can't thank you all enough for participating. This has been very stimulating and interesting. We've learned it. We learned so much more from all of you. I had a professor once that walked in and started class. The first thing he said was, it was a fairly large class, about 60 people. He said, I want to make one thing clear. I'm 10 times smarter than anybody in this class. I have 2 PhDs. I have this experience and that experience. He said, but I'm not smarter than 10 of you put together. And that's a lesson I always learn. And this has been a great opportunity for us, and for Work Trucks Solutions appreciates it. And we hope as we go forward, we can keep the relationship strong. So thank you. Thank you all very, very much for your time. We sure appreciate it.
That's all.
Okay.
Thanks for hosting.